Hey everybody, back for part 3 of the Super Detailing a Dash tutorial series. And in this part here, we're going to be doing the dry brushing. Now, before I get started in this part of the tutorial, just want to let everybody know that has never done dry brushing before. If you are following along with the steps that we've done so far, and you have your black wash down and your colors and stuff put in, like we did in part 2, if you've never done dry brushing, you need to learn it, because if this is your first attempt at doing dry brushing, you're going to take a chance of ruining all the time that you've put into your dash so far. So I've actually done a dry brushing tutorial on back in the archives in my videos, and I may go ahead and do another one and just kind of update it and show everybody, you know, how I go about dry brushing, especially doing the silver that we're going to be doing around these gauge bezels. But just a word of advice there, you need to, you know, have done dry brushing before and kind of learn the ins and outs of it, and that'll keep you from, hopefully keep you from messing up all of the work you've put into the dash so far. Now, another thing I'd also like to touch on before we get started is on this Peterbilt dash we're doing, we painted it white. And I did that for a couple of different reasons. The main reason that I did it for is it was actually yellow to begin with. And when we do our black wash within our gauges, I wanted the white lettering. So to keep from having to go back and dry brush each individual gauge, I just go ahead and paint the gauge white to begin with, and then do the black wash, and then that allows the letters and the numbers to be white. And you will also notice that the dash is not painted. The reason I do not paint the dash before I detail it is because of the dry brushing stage. These truck dashes, it kind of depends on the dash that you're using. You know, what you're working with. Some dashes are, you know, two-piece where the cluster and stuff you can do separately. That works out great. But in these dashes here, there's a lot of raised detail around the edges, which is actually the dash itself. And the gauges are kind of inset into that. And as you do your dry brushing, if the dash was already painted, you would be getting some of the silver that you're going to be using around the bezels up onto the dash itself, and you don't want that. Unless it's a metal dash and you're trying to make it look like it's worn a little bit, it'll come out real good. So that's why we did not paint the dash yet. But as we're doing this series, or actually as I've been doing it, I'll probably go ahead and just do this entire dash from start to finish, and just to show you some of the techniques that I use and how it'll come out, and how I go about, you know, protecting everything that we're doing here when we get ready to spray the dash. And depending on the size of the dash and the type of paint you're using, you could also brush it. That's where the Vallejo model color paints come in very handy, because you can brush those on with a soft brush, and the brush strokes go away. I mean, it does not even look like it's brush painted. But we'll probably be using the airbrush on this one, so I'll show you exactly how we go about doing that. And just wanted to get that out there first, just let everybody know, if you haven't done dry brushing, definitely work on that technique a little bit before you start trying to do this detailing that we're doing here. So we're going to go ahead and pan the camera down. I'll show you what we'll be using for the dry brushing part of it, and we'll get this thing going. Alright, now like I said in the first video, we're going to be using the Model Master Chrome Silver. And this is my go-to color and paint. This is enamel for dry brushing. I have very good luck with doing it with the enamels. Some people will use acrylics. You can use acrylics to do it. I just personally find that the enamels are better for me. So it's kind of your choice. Like I say, if you've done dry brushing before and you have the technique down, whether you're using acrylics or enamels, or you know, whichever type of paint you're using, you know, you can change that up. You don't have to use the enamel, but I tend to use it most of the time on dry brushing. It works very well for me. And we'll be using our 1/4 inch wide flat brush. And for dry brushing, you want to make sure that this brush is dead flat on the front. You don't want it to be in and out any, because that's going to screw up your the way that the bristles will pull across your raised detail. And we're just going to be using some brush cleaner, which is just enamel thinner is all it is. And I'm using a shop towel here. Now, for the guys that may be wanting to learn the dry brushing technique, I would recommend using a white paper towel, because you can see the color come off a lot better onto the white. But I've been doing it so long that I'm used to using these blue ones, so I know about when it's right to go ahead and move the brush from this towel over to the part that we're going to be dry brushing. So what we're going to do here is I just shake up the silver enamel, and I use the cap itself. And sometimes with this silver, it'll dry up pretty quick in the cap, and all I do is just kind of set it back on the bottle, tighten it down, shake it up again, and start over, depending on how much you have to dry brush at one time. So how I go about doing this is I just take the cap with whatever paint's left in it there, and I just stand the brush straight up and just dip it into the paint. And you want about, that's what it's going to look like on the end. You can see where it drew up into the bristles a little bit. And we're just going to come over on our cloth, and we're going to wipe that back and forth on the cloth. And the key to dry brushing is when you do not see any more color come out of the brush onto the cloth, you are ready to move over to your part. And once you get to your part, you just want to use a soft motion on the brush, and especially to get started, just to make sure you don't have too much paint on it. And this is one of those things where a little goes a long ways. You may think that nothing is happening, but if you've got the right amount of paint in the brush, there's more happening than you would believe. So just keep a check on what you're doing, and you can dip the brush back in there again, and it's the same technique. None of this changes. And it's just a matter of pulling the brush across your raised detail, and that little bit of silver paint that is left in the brush will collect on the edge of the raised detail. And it will also help mute some of the colors a little bit if you put a little bit more pressure down. And that really helps blend everything in and really makes it come out to a scale appearance. But like I say, I mean, dry brushing is not hard. It's a little tricky to learn the technique. But once you learn it, you will be using it a lot on detailing stuff. I use it on my frames and just various components on a model. I will use dry brushing, and this will be just for the pretty much for the bezels and stuff like that. Is while we're doing this part. Once we do the wood graining on the dash, we will actually go back and do another dry brushing session to pick up the raised fasteners and things like that after we do the wood grain. So now I'm going to move on over to the bezels themselves. And as you can see, I'm just pulling the brush toward me. And I'll flip the brush over. And then flip it back over. I just keep kind of reversing the brush. And after you've done this for a while, you will notice how much paint is being collected on the raised areas. So it kind of gives you an idea of where you're at and what it's starting to look like, how much more you need to do. We're going to do one more pass over this. And remember that the more that you dip the brush into this paint as you go along, the more the bristles will soak it up. If you look at the bristles now, you can see how far the paint has moved up inside of that brush. So make sure that you're, getting most of that out of there. You may have to wipe it off a little bit more the longer that your session lasts on dry brushing. And this is another thing on your gauges. If you put a little bit more pressure down, you'll actually get a little bit of a silver tint come across the gauge itself and the bezel. And it helps, like I say, it helps mute the colors. And it really blends everything in and makes it look good. And you can also turn the brush up on end. If you've got a little area that's like a little end cove or whatever, I'll turn it up on end and just be a little bit lighter with your pressure when you do that, because you don't have the width of the brush working for you. So it'll tend to drop down inside of the recessed detail. So you don't want to do that too much. And once you do this, it really starts to, you know, bring the detail of the dash out and just starts cleaning up all of your previous work that you've done. That's why I say you don't have to be exactly perfect on the placement on, you know, the wash and the other colors, but try to be as accurate as you can, because dry brushing is only going to cover up so much as far as flaws, because it is a very subtle technique. I mean, it's not like you're painting with a brush, you know, and totally coloring a surface in. But that's actually looking pretty good. I'm real happy with that. And we've got some vents up here on top of the dash. I'll be going back and doing a black wash inside of those, and we'll be doing some dry brushing on those also after we get the dash painted. But for right now, we're just worried about getting the bezels and stuff finished up. Another little pointer that I have as far as dry brushing is, you know, like this brush right here, this is all that I use it for, is just dry brushing. I don't use it for anything else. That way I know this brush is in good shape every time I get it out to use it. So, you know, if you can get a pack of those brushes like I showed you from that come from Walmart, you know, just take that 1/4 inch brush out of there and that 1/2 inch brush out of that pack and use them just for dry brushing. And that way when you get ready to do it, you always have a good edge, and it'll keep all your work consistent. Okay, so we're done with that. We're going to go ahead and clean our brush out in the enamel thinner, just to get all that out of there. Like I say, make sure your brush is clean each time that you're, you know, done with a session, and you're going to be setting the brush down. Don't set it down with that residue, especially with enamels in it, because it will ruin your brush, and you don't want to do that, especially for dry brushing. You need these bristles to be soft and flexible, and I basically, you know, clean and dry my brush the same way that I do dry brushing, just so the bristles are doing exactly the same motion that they do when I'm dry brushing. So, but we'll hold the dash up here and I'll show you what it looks like at this point. It's really starting to come along now. It's looking real good. And the next step will be moving on to the future on the lenses. And that's not a very hard technique. It's pretty simple actually. So we'll hold the dash up here, and that is what we're looking like. And as you can see, everything is starting to have a nice outline around it. Now, if you look at the wood graining texture that's on there, you will notice that the dry brushing did pull off on that raised detail on the wood graining. That's no big deal. We're not worried about that. Now, if you did not have the raised or wood grain technique and you wanted that to be the color of your actual dash, that's something that you're going to have to be very careful with when you're doing your dry brushing. So that's why I don't paint my dash first, and that way I can go ahead and get all these bezels and everything looking real good. And then to finish cleaning that up, once we do the wood graining technique around each one of the gauges, it will really start to make all that stuff look real clean and crisp. But that's what we look like at this point. As you can see, it's starting to look like it has metallic bezels around it. Looks real good. Everything's cleaned up nice. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more here. I'm asking a lot of my camera. But that's what we're looking like so far. We'll move across here. So that's where we're at. So hopefully everybody is following along, and if you're working on a dash, hopefully it's looking like this. If not, and you have any questions, just leave me a comment on the video, and we'll answer any questions you have on this or any other stage so far. So that's all we're going to do for today. The next step will be doing the future for creating the flat lenses. Now, I'll touch on a couple little hints and pointers in that video to give you some ideas there. So stay tuned for that one. And like always, I thank you for watching and supporting Showtime Studios, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.